So when I was growing up, I didn't necessarily grow up in a Christian home. My parents took us to church occasionally, but we never really were invested in a church home. I was never super involved, and my parents didn't necessarily teach us about Jesus when we were at home. But growing up, I struggled a lot with self-worth. I was bullied in elementary school, and that had a lot of residual issues leading into my teenage years. I did anything and everything I could to fit in. I changed who I was depending on who I was with so that they would like me. And I just never felt good enough. And so I tried harder and harder and harder to meet standards or meet expectations that weren't really there. Up until that point, I didn't have anyone that told me, hey, you can be your own person. Hey, you are loved just as you are. Until I started the 6th grade and I met a girl named Morgan. Morgan and her family started inviting me to their home. They started taking me to church with them. They really just started loving on me intentionally and telling me, hey, we love you just as you are. You don't have to do this to fit in with our family. Hey, come with us to this place where you're also loved as you are. So starting in the 6th grade, I started attending church. I started going to youth group. I got really involved because I found this place where people just accepted me as I was. I didn't have to change to be something that they wanted me to be for them to like me. They were just kind to me from the moment I walked in the door. With that being said, I still was only playing a part. They liked me and they loved me for who I was, but they expected me to be a good girl. And so I played the part of the good Christian girl because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. When I was 13, actually on my 13th birthday, I was sitting at a summer camp, and this guy named Andy was on stage, and he was presenting the gospel, and he was talking about just how we are not worthy in and of ourselves, but it's Jesus' sacrifice on the cross and our believing in him that makes us worthy and righteous. And I remember sitting there and thinking, okay, that's interesting. I went to my cabin that night. I still played the part. I was really involved in my youth group at this point. I was the girl that ran the PowerPoint, and I remember sitting in the back on the floor. We had just a bit of an extended worship period, and sitting there, and it clearly hitting me that I couldn't play the part enough to get to heaven. And I couldn't play the part enough to earn my salvation, that it was a free gift and all I had to do was accept it. That I was a sinner. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how good I played that part, I was still a sinner through and through. I still fell short of the glory of God. And so that night on my 13th birthday, sitting in a summer camp with my youth pastor and Sunday school teacher, I accepted Christ as my Savior. We prayed, I committed my life to him. I confessed that I was a sinner, really understood what that meant, that no matter how hard I tried, I was still gonna be a sinner, but through Christ's sacrifice on the cross and through his blood, I was cleansed of that, and I was made clean, and I was made holy in his presence. And so since then, as we grow, as we learn, as we spend more time with Jesus, we're called to walk in this obedience, in this faith that just it refines us, it grows us, it challenges us. It takes a day-to-day obedience to see the fruit of that walk with Christ. And so once you accept Christ, a lot of times we see that we're like, oh, salvation, we're done. But salvation is the beginning of our journey. And now after Christ, after we accept him, is where the journey begins. And so just leading day to day with Christ, being obedient, listening to him, spending time with him, praying, spending time in the word, seeing that fruit come out in our lives through our day-to-day walk with him. Since I was 13, I still struggle with worth. I still struggle with wanting to fit in or change who I am so that people like me. But then I'm constantly reminded, because I have Christ in my life, that he loves me just as I am, that he made me just as I am, that I am worthy to him, and that's all that matters. And so when we accept Christ, it changes our perspective of things. And that is really what shifted for me that night when I was 13 years old, as I shifted from this perspective of I'm never going to be good enough to I don't have to be good enough. Jesus still loves me, and Jesus still died on the cross for me.